In this video, I want to share with you 5 tips for a great Common App essay that doesn't necessarily focus on a challenge. And then I want to show you in an example essay how that student wove those qualities into his personal statement. And I want to see as I read them if you can spot those. So we'll play a little game. Notice also that this student did face challenges, but didn't make that the main topic. He subtly wove it in, and I'll see if you can spot that too. Then I'm going to talk to you about how you can take these qualities and learn from them to write your own personal statement. Let's get it. So I feel like a lot of times students feel like they have to write about a challenge in their personal statement. And if they don't have some big epic challenge to write about, then they feel stuck. But it's not necessarily true. You don't have to write about a challenge in your personal statement. In fact, some of my favorite essays of all time don't have any challenges in them. The other thing I want to say to you is even if you have faced a challenge, you don't have to make that the main thing in your personal statement. You can find a way to subtly weave that challenge in and just mention it briefly if you want to in your personal statement without having to have it dominate. First, what is the purpose of the personal statement that you write for colleges and universities? I believe it's to demonstrate the skills, qualities, values, and interests that you're going to bring with you to the college campus. Now, how do you do that? Well, the example essay that we're about to look at did it in 5 different ways. First of all, core values. Now, what are your core values? These are the things that you would fight for. These are the things that mean the most to you. They're the things that drive you. And we'll do a little exercise at the end of this video to help you figure out what your own core values are. Number 2, insight. I think it's really important to strive for insight. And really, insight is the answer to the question, so what? But here's a key. You have to do this in a way that surprises us. And again, after the example essay, I'll show you a simple exercise to help you figure out what your insights are. Third is vulnerability. Now, what do I mean by vulnerability? It's like, is the essay actually personal? So not just like, do we know more about you after we've read your personal statement, but do we actually feel closer to you? And there's a simple way to test this. Finally, craft. Do we get the sense that you revised this over several drafts and not just like, oh, I wrote this in one night and turned it in? The 5th one, which is sometimes underappreciated, is did you consider all 5 senses? Now, this is kind of related to craft, but it's about how you tell your story. Did you just use images, which is great, or did you bring in the sense of smell? Did you bring in the sense of feeling, the sense of taste? Notice how this author at the beginning of this essay does this beautifully. And as I read this essay, again, I want you to play a little game and see if you can spot where each of these qualities are. So again, they're values, insight, vulnerability, craft, and bringing in all 5 senses. A lot to remember, but I'll point it out as we go. Here's the essay. I'm Mexican. The sound of frying empanadas and the smell of burning peppers. My mother calling me mi vida, and my relatives kissing my cheek. Running but never hiding from the dreaded chancla, and always responding with muy bien, ¿y tú? Some of you hearing this are like, yep, I know that life. Childhood vacations to Puebla and Cancun, swimming in the ocean and playing in the sand, feeling the need to be good at cross country, feeling the need to be able to endure spicy. Those are all me. All right, so it's already obvious that he's bringing in the senses. Check that opening out, it's so beautiful. The sound of frying empanadas, the smell of burning peppers, my mother calling me mi vida, so that's sound again. Running but never hiding from the dreaded chancla, that's like arguably feeling, because he's feeling fear and imagining getting slapped with the chancla, which by the way means a slipper. There are some visuals in there. So he's really drawn us in, I think, using all 5 senses. And we're like, wow, okay, this is what to him it means to be Mexican. Notice the transition. Those are all me. Next sentence, I'm Chinese. The utter preference for using chopsticks in every scenario, and the unhealthy craving for rice with every meal. The sharing of every dish placed on the center turntable, hot pot for celebration, and tea eggs, of all things, as a favorite dish. My father's musical Cantonese conversations with my grandparents. Again, you can hear sound. And their constant inquiry asking, how is school? Being named after the dragon for strength and living for 3 years in Shanghai. Notice how he's weaving in these different sides of him. Really short sentences. That's something that's cool stylistically that he's doing. Rather than having these long epic sentences, these little snapshots. The constant pressure to get good grades. My father's desire for me to become a doctor. And the never-ending, how are you so bad at math? You're Asian. Now you can see the vulnerability here and the challenges that he's weaving in kind of subtly. right? The social pressure to, to excel in school. How are you so bad at math? You're Asian. There's this way that people are stereotyping him, and he hints at it without going super in depth. So he didn't make the whole essay about how, oh, people think that I'm this, but I'm actually this. But he's woven it in subtle ways. And again, I want to just point out the stylistic thing that he's doing, these short sentences with these specific details that are visual, or you can smell or taste, is allowing him to fit in more information. Now, I'm not saying you definitely should do this in your personal statement, because it can be nice to do something different or to have some variety, but it's a way that he's using to get, like I said, more information in. Next paragraph. Those are all me. I am American, a citizen with the freedom to vote, the freedom to speak my mind, and the representation by all the cultures and countries of the world, shopping sprees at Target and a constant diet of fast foods, full acceptance of the consumer society, and a rather unhealthy addiction to social media and technology, going to football games on Friday nights and watching Netflix on Saturday nights, always watching my weight, always looking at others, always wishing, always wanting for more. Those are all me. Two things I want to note here in this paragraph. One is the nice variety of details that he's got and the specifics, but the second thing is the vulnerability that he brings in here. So he talks about always watching my weight, always looking at others, always wishing, always wanting for more. These are these longings that he experiences that we experience too. So I think sometimes students are under the impression that they only have to show their positive qualities. They have to look good, right? Look at all the things I've accomplished, all the things that I've done. But I think that there's a deeper purpose here. And it's to get the reader to see that you are alike, right? That there are human things that you experience that potentially they've experienced. And who hasn't, been self-conscious about the way that they looked or compared themselves to others. So he's really inviting the reader to see who he really is. And by who he really is, it's like who he is beyond the sort of external views of, like as I said, his accomplishments or, the things that he does. Next paragraph. Those are all me. I'm Catholic. Sunday mornings always spent at church. The private Catholic middle and high schools, each with masses for special occasions. Notice the details. Baptism, Eucharist, and confirmation. Praying before each meal and saying, "Go away in the name of Jesus," to nighttime horrors. Theology classes, and realizing there's so much more to religion than faith. Having something to believe in. Questioning what you believe in. Turning to God when I see the horrors in the world and getting no response. So he's doing a lovely thing in this paragraph, which is similar to what he did in the last paragraph. Notice those phrases again. Having something to believe in. Questioning what you believe in. So there's a little paradox, right? A contradiction where he's got two things. He has something to believe in, but he also questions it. And putting those side by side and not resolving them is pretty vulnerable. He's not tying it up in a neat little bow. He's saying, both of these things exist in me. Wow, isn't that like life? Isn't that like us? Don't we have those things in our lives? So it's really nice. I think it brings a deeper level of understanding of him. And I think it's pretty vulnerable. And then notice the next sentence. Turning to God when I see the horrors in the world and getting no response. Again, he's not resolving it. He's just saying, sometimes I question my faith. Yes, I see that, faith is more than just religion, but sometimes I wonder like what this is all about. So it's deeply existential, but he's doing it through these simple short phrases. Those are all me, he says. Look how he concludes the essay. I'm homosexual. An unusual obsession with fashion and clothing, watching Game of Thrones not for Daenerys or Cersei, but for Jon Snow and Jaime. Seeing Love, Simon for the first time and crying at least 5 times. Always conscious, always thinking before talking. Going to an all-boys school. Dealing with gay being the go-to expression for displeasure. Being called a faggot when I act gay. Fear of my parents finding out. So more vulnerability here. He's revealing some of the struggles that he goes through, going to an all-boys school. He's revealing this other aspect of his identity that he hasn't revealed yet. And he's talking about, fear of my parents finding out. He's still got that struggle going on with his family. So again, he doesn't make this the dominant thing of his essay. He doesn't say, oh, this is all that defines me. It's just one aspect of who he is. Now check out the final paragraph. He says, those are all me. I'm Jonathan K. Lung Eng. I love reading and I'm addicted to fan fiction. I have 3 siblings and love my 2 dogs more than anything in the world. I can't eat spicy food and I have the biggest sweet tooth. I play League of Legends and soccer. I'm a Marvel geek and theater nerd. My friends call me Jenga. My teammates call me Jeng. My teachers call me Mr. Eng. I am Mexican. I am Chinese. I am American. I am Catholic. I am gay. I'm all of this and more. And most of all, I am me. This essay always chokes me up. My identity is not a singular identity, but a conglomeration of experiences, beliefs, and origins. This is my identity. This is me. I love this essay. There's so much going well here. So this last paragraph is kind of a mini montage. And a montage is just jumping around in space and time and having some, interconnected thread. And in some ways, this whole essay is a montage, right? Because he starts off with the first identity, I'm Mexican. And then he goes through all these other different identities. And then at the end, he's like, but there's more to me, right? And so in terms of demonstrating the skills, qualities, values, and interests that he's going to bring with him to college, this essay totally does this. But let's go back and do a quick analysis of the 5 qualities I mentioned. So first I mentioned values. Do you see values in this essay? Absolutely. Just to give you a sense of what some of them are, I wrote them down here. Culture, family, faith, intellectual curiosity, social justice, vulnerability, sense of humor, sensitivity, fun, adventure, and more. The next is insight. Does he answer the question, so what, in a compelling way? I think he does. In particular, the phrases full acceptance of the consumer society and a rather unhealthy addiction to social media and technology shows that he's aware of being a product of American culture. And then you've got things like having something to believe in, questioning what you believe in. He's demonstrating his awareness that you can have multiple truths, potentially contradictory truths existing in you at the same time, which is a beautifully mature, way of viewing the world and way of viewing yourself. And his confidence in putting that in his essay says something about him too. The third one was vulnerability, right? He's got those phrases, always watching my weight, always looking at others. And he's got that phrase later, being called a faggot when I act gay, fear of my parents finding out. These are details that wouldn't be present anywhere else in his application, probably. Bringing them in here helps us understand more about who he is and what he's been through. Finally, craft. And the quality and range of details, many of which I've gone through already, really gives us a sense that he spent some time working to hone this. So in terms of his Chinese identity, he doesn't just say I'm Chinese, he gives specific visual details to let us know what that looks like in his life. So at this point, you're probably wondering, okay, how do I do this in my personal statement? First, values. Below this video, you'll find a link to something called the values exercise. And if you're trying to figure out, what's most important to you, you can do this in like 5 to 10 minutes. Go through the video and you'll be able to identify what your core values are, and then ask yourself, how do these manifest themselves in my life? The second is insight. Now, I said already that this is the answer to the question, so what? How do you come up with insight? Do this. Once you've written your personal statement, maybe you've already written a draft, go through the paragraphs, and at the ends, ask yourself, so what? So what? And keep pushing yourself until you come up with something that actually surprises you. Because if you end up writing something that surprises you, oftentimes I call this a fresh baked insight. You can kind of read when something, someone's kind of said it over and over. But when you find something that surprises you, oftentimes that has a pretty good chance of surprising the reader. The third is vulnerability. Now, I'm not saying you have to reveal all of your biggest, deepest, darkest secrets and go to vulnerability level 10. I think a good personal statement is actually kind of in the 6 to 7 range of vulnerability. Now, how do you test that? It's kind of a weird thing. But actually just read your personal statement and ask yourself, okay, well, how would I rate this on my own vulnerability scale? And then give it to somebody else and ask them to rate it and say, hey, give it to someone you trust, of course, but say, how vulnerable do you think this is? 1 being not at all vulnerable, 10 being whoa, overshare. We're not going for 10. We're going for kind of like that, yes, personal, but not too personal. And by the way, 6 to 7 is really specific. It could totally be in the 5 to 8 range of vulnerability. The fourth is craft. Did you clearly spend several drafts revising it? I find that the essays that really turned out great went through at least 5 revisions, and some went through many more. And finally, engaging the reader using all 5 senses. Ask yourself, go through a personal statement. In fact, if you've already written your personal statement draft, you can go through and read through it and go, okay, which of the senses is dominant? Which is to say, which are you using the most? It probably is sight. Oftentimes, students are writing about the things that we can see. But ask yourself, how could I bring in scent? Or how could I bring in taste or feel? Is there a way that I could draw the reader in even more and give them a sense of what it's like being in my world? Quick tip that oftentimes students read their essay and they can't even tell which senses are coming through. So you can either give it to someone else, or it could be that your language is just so abstract that you don't actually have specific details yet that are bringing those senses in. So give that a look and see. Again, if you need to show it to somebody else, you can. Don't show it to too many people. Maybe show it to like one person you trust or two at the max. Hopefully you found this content useful. I really hope you did, because this is kind of my life's work. If you want more, you can go to collegeessayguide.com, where I spend every day, all day, basically creating more resources for you. What else do I want you to know? Oh, if you like this video, give me a like or a subscribe if you want to receive more videos. You know how this thing works. Or if there's a specific question that you've got that you feel like, you'd like me to cover, or you want me to cover in a future video, I read these comments, I'm listening. Go ahead and put these below this video. And yeah, write an awesome personal statement.